YouTube, it's Charlie, and today we're reacting to a new video. The video is called Things That Are Normal in America but Insane Everywhere Else. I think I will have some stuff to say because I'm European. If you didn't hear it, I am French. So I'm already imagining what it's gonna talk about, like what the video is gonna be about, like tipping culture. So I am really excited to give my opinion, my unwanted opinion. The video is made by Tiana Thompson, if you want to check her out. And yeah, let's dip into it. Let's dip into that video.
There's a very specific version of America that the rest of the world knows. Hollywood, Silicon Valley, the moon landing, Elvis Presley, the invention of the iPhone, Coca-Cola, the American dream. And then there's the reality.
Okay, but I think the American dream is not really a thing anymore. Like, most of the time, if you're not successful in Europe, you won't be more successful in America, where the system is like making it harder to grind if you start from zero. In my opinion, maybe I'm wrong, but in my opinion, the American dream is not really a thing. Like, in my surrounding, people don't dream to live in America. And I'm surrounded by a lot of people and by people that are very different from each other. So I don't know how it is. Maybe in other countries it is, but in Europe, I don't think people are dreaming about becoming American or like even believing into the American dream anymore.
New report reveals 69% say their income is falling behind the cost of living.
This morning, a young Kentucky man says his life is on hold because a heart condition left him with massive debt despite having health insurance.
Millions with student loan debt are facing uncertainty and the potential for higher monthly payments.
Not every family can afford to pay. 1/3 of students are in debt.
It genuinely is an extraordinary country in a lot of ways. But this video isn't about that version. This video is about the version that doesn't make it into the tourist brochures. The version where you can follow every rule, work hard your entire life, do everything right, and still lose everything because you got sick. Where children are publicly shamed at school for not having enough money for lunch. Where a machine, not even just people anymore, but machines, ask you for a tip after doing the most basic task. Let me show you what I mean. Let me tell you about James. James is in his late 30s. He lives in Colorado, he's got a good job, a family, and he gets health insurance through his employer. By any reasonable measure, we would say that James has done everything right. Well, in 2019, James woke up one morning with tightness in his chest and pain radiating down his left arm. His wife drove him to the emergency room immediately, and they admitted him right away. For 3 days, he was in the hospital. They ran an EKG, a stress test, they did a CT scan, and did blood panels every few hours. A cardiologist came in to see him, then another one. They monitored his heart around the clock, put him on medication, made sure he was stable. On day 3, they discharged him home. They said it wasn't a heart attack, but it was a serious warning, and that he should take better care of his health. James went home, he hugged his kids, and felt extremely lucky. And 2 weeks later, an envelope arrives in the mail. The hospital bill for $112,000. Now,
How can it even be this expensive? Like, they're charging so much for that, even if it's not like cashback and stuff. I know in France, for example, we have like the green, like it's not a green card, but it's a vital card that makes that we have like free healthcare and free hospitals if you go into public hospital, because there is also private hospitals that are like way better, but you have to pay. But it would never be this much. Like 112K bucks is actually insane. It's an insane amount of money. It's more than double than what I make in a year, and I'm not like, I feel like I'm making a lot of money for a French person. That's actually insane.
James has health insurance, good insurance even, or so he thought. And his insurance did cover most of his hospital stay. But his share, after the insurance paid, was $34,000. And just to put that into perspective, the median American household earns around $74,000 per year. So essentially, James was being asked to hand over nearly half of an entire year's income for a 3-day stay in the hospital, for a stay that didn't even involve surgery. I don't know about you, but I don't have $34,000 sitting around. Most people don't. And neither did James. He tried to negotiate with the hospital, and they came down a little bit on the price, but not enough. So James was left with only one option. He filed for bankruptcy. And here's the thing, this sounds very overdramatic, but this isn't a tragedy. This is an average Tuesday in America.
But this will not happen to you one time in your life. You know, if that happened one time in your life, yeah, well, it's 30K, but it's one time in your life and you kind of like plan for it. But if he has a heart problem, it's all your life. So that means all your life you will have to pay this kind of amount of money. It's actually, it's unbelievable. Like,
About 530,000 American families file for bankruptcy every year, largely in part due to medical bills. If you're watching this from the UK or Germany, Canada, France, that number probably just broke your brain a little bit. You're probably doing the math in your head thinking, how is this possible? And if you're American watching this, you probably just nodded because you've heard this story, or maybe you've lived it. Maybe it's your story. That gap between the international confusion and the American shrug.
It's just so sad to believe that in a country that is like supposed to be developed and rich, people just will die in front of hospitals because they can't pay their hospital bill. This is unbelievable. This is crazy. Just imagining this, like, how? What?
Is exactly what this video is about. There are 5 things happening in America right now that are completely legal, completely normalized, and just accepted as simply how things are, that the rest of the world finds genuinely incomprehensible. We're going to look at all 5 of those things today, and by the end,
It's not incomprehensible, it's unimaginable. Like, I can't even imagine a society that can work with this kind of system.
and I think you'll see that they're not actually 5 separate things. They're one thing. The same thing, wearing 5 different masks. Let's start with the one that started this whole video, healthcare. Let's talk about numbers for a second because the scale of this is important. Every year, approximately 530,000 Americans file for personal bankruptcy, and the leading cause, the single biggest driver, is medical debt. A study published in the American Journal of Public Health found that 66.5% of all personal bankruptcies in the US are tied to medical issues, either the bills themselves.
So, like, you're permanently just gambling when you're American, but you cannot win. You're just gambling and you can never win.
Or the income lost because of a medical illness. To understand how strange that is, let's do a quick comparison. A 3-day hospital stay in the United States costs on average around $30,000. In Germany, you can expect to spend around $5,000. In Canada, 0 is what you'll pay out of pocket. $0. Those are the same 3 days, the same human body, and generally the same standard of medical care, but extremely different numbers on each of those bills. So why is that? Well, it's because the American healthcare system isn't really a healthcare system. It's a healthcare market. Hospitals are businesses. Insurance companies are businesses. Pharmaceutical companies are businesses. They have shareholders.
Doing business on people's health, if I speak.
They have quarterly earnings calls. They are legally and structurally optimized to do one thing, generate profit. And here's what that means in practice. That means that your hospital has financial incentive to charge as much as
How, when you care about the people, you have an hospital, so you want people to be healthy and you want to heal people, how can you do that? And at night, you go home and you look at yourself in a mirror and you be like, I'm a good person. Like, how can you even look at yourself in the mirror after doing something like that? I don't understand. Like,
the market will bear. And your insurance company has an incentive to pay out as little as possible to maximize their profit. Those 2 incentives are pointed directly at each other, and you are caught in the middle. And that's not a conspiracy, that's just plain fact. Most other wealthy countries looked at that structure and said, no, some things are too important, too universal, too fundamental to be left to the market. When your house is on fire, nobody shows up with a card reader and waits for you to pay before they act. The fire department exists because society decided that some services need to be available to everyone unconditionally. Most of the world extended that same logic to healthcare. America didn't. Another piece of this is insurance. In America, most people get their health insurance through their
but there is no way some people think it's a normal and logical system and that it's just the way it is, right?
employer, which sounds fine until you're sick and can't work. Then you lose your job. which means then you lose your insurance, which happens to be at the exact time that you need it the most. The Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare, helped with this problem. Millions of people got coverage who didn't have it before, but it didn't change the underlying structure. The profit motive of these companies are still there. The same procedure at the same hospital can cost 10 times more depending on which insurer you have.
I actually saw something saying that like French people were paying more taxes than American, but when you actually compare the taxes we pay compared to like on the average how much an American will pay for example healthcare in their life, in reality we're paying way less than them just because it's like put into our taxes, so it's like all over the year and we don't have to pay for it anymore.
So adults in America can go bankrupt for getting sick. But surely, the children are protected from this kind of financial logic, right?
So if I'm not mistaken, maybe I am, I think school lunch are free in France. And that help a lot of family because some kids only have one lunch a day because it is free at school. So for me, it's a fundamental right. Every kid should be like having good food every day for free because literally kids and students in general are the future of a country. Like the future workers, the future doctors, the future engineers, the future constructor, anything are the kids of today. So for me, just basic right that we should invest money into the future, but well, we are talking about America right now, I guess.
Thousands of American schools, when a child's lunch account runs out, the hot meal gets taken off their tray. Sometimes they get a cold cheese sandwich instead. Sometimes the meal gets thrown in the trash in front of them. And in some states, they can be denied food entirely. The specific policy depends on where you live, but the fact is that this decision, whether a hungry child eats today or not, is left to a patchwork of local laws rather than a national.
But once again, how can you go home at night, do that, and then look at yourself and be like, I'm such a good person. I have done some good work today.
Guarantee. In 2022, total unpaid school lunch debt across the US exceeded $262 million. And the reason for this is probably not what you think. 1 in 6 American children lives in a food insecure household, meaning they don't reliably know where their next meal is coming from. And when those children show up to school, the one place that's supposed to be safe, neutral, and educational, they can be publicly marked as the kid who doesn't have money. Some schools have even stamped children's arms with debt notices, like a mark of shame that they carry through the school day. Some schools have even required kids to do chores to work off their balance. And in 2019, a school district in Rhode Island.
I am speechless, guys, of what am I hearing. I know that American system is like this, you know, everyone knows now, like it's just, everyone knows. But hearing it and hearing the detail on it is actually shocking, like literally. It's not even imaginable that it exists because as an European, I have never experienced that.
Announced that it would deny students their graduation diploma if they had unpaid lunch balances, denying a diploma for lunch debt in one of the richest countries in the world. In Finland, school meals have been free since 1948 for every child, regardless of the income, as a matter of law. In Sweden, lunch is free for all children through age 16. In the UK, every child in the first 3 years of primary school gets a free meal. And in Scotland, that age extends even further. Even in much of the developing world, school feeding programs are standard, often supported by the UN in countries with a fraction of America's GDP. France, to be fair, does subsidize school meals based on a sliding scale of your income. So wealthier families pay more and poorer families pay less. So it's definitely not 100%.
Yeah, because it's a society, so everyone has to participate so that everyone can grow together. That's why it's called a society, guys. Like, disclaimer.
Free, but it's still meaningfully more equitable than what exists in the US. The United States spends more money per capita than almost any country on earth, and it has no national policy guaranteeing any child a meal at school. It has chosen not to make school lunch free, and that's not an accident. It's a choice. So,
it's a business, because in America, everything is a business.
We have children going into debt for food and adults going bankrupt for healthcare. Now let's talk about the moment at the end of your restaurant meal when a tablet gets turned towards you displaying 18%, 20%, or 25%. And somehow you're the bad guy if you press no tip.
It's so crazy to me that you have employees, and you are not the one paying them. It does not make any sense. I remember I went to America with my family. We were in Miami, so it's already very expensive. We ate pasta in an Italian restaurant. It was $30 per person to eat pasta. Pasta. $30 per person. No, it was $50 per person. I was like, well, 30. It was $50 per person around the table to eat pasta. Plus, you had to tip 20%. This is insane. It's so expensive, but the guy owning the restaurant is just getting super rich. No, he has a restaurant. He make profit out of it. And he doesn't need to pay his employee because people that come eat in his restaurant pay for him. It's.
I want to start with a number that most Americans have never heard, and most specifically people outside of America who can probably barely believe is even real. The federal minimum wage for tipped workers in the United States is $2.13 an hour.
In one of the richest country in the world, guys.
$2.13 per hour in the big year of 2026. That number hasn't changed since 1991. So in 30 plus years, while inflation has roughly doubled the cost of living, the legal minimum wage for a waiter or a bartender has not moved a single cent. The assumption built into US law is that tips will make up the difference. And if tips don't cover the difference,
also, I'm going to say it, but I find it pretty annoying when you go to America and eat in a restaurant since the waiter has to have a tip, they're super nice and stuff, but why do they tell me about their life? Like when I go to the restaurants, I don't particularly want the person that is like serving us at the table to be like too much. You know what I mean? It's not even about being nice anymore. It's just about like it's too much. Maybe I'm crazy for that, but
employers are technically required to top up the wage to the standard minimum. Technically. But in practice, enforcement of this almost never happens. Wage theft is rampant, and workers are left to absorb the risk. So this means that when you sit down at a restaurant in America, you are not just a customer. Oh no. You are functionally part of your server's payroll. That restaurant has outsourced a significant portion of its labor costs to you, the client, on a voluntary basis, enforced entirely by social pressure. And it used to just be at restaurants, which can be annoying, but okay, it's understandable. But now tipping culture has metastasized. It's at coffee shops now, takeout windows, food trucks.
And we're starting to have it more and more in France, when people literally having a salary. And it's starting to be normalized in France for absolutely no reason. And it doesn't make sense.
Hotel front desks, airport kiosks, even the self-checkout machines at grocery stores now are asking for a tip. A machine asking you for a tip. And the expected percentage has crept up as well. It used to be that 15% was the standard. Now most tip screens start at 18%. Many of them start at 20%, 22%, 25%, and there's always that third option at the bottom in slightly smaller font, no tip, that you have to actively choose while the cashier watches you. The easy version of the story is that Americans are annoyed about tipping culture. And yes, that's true, but that's not the full story of what's actually happening. What's really happening is that workers are being held hostage by a broken system, and the annoying tip culture is just a symptom of that. The real problem is that a full-time server in America cannot live on their legal wage without tips. That's not normal. In Japan, tipping is considered rude, not just slightly awkward, but legitimately actually offensive. Because the implication when you tip someone in Japan is that that person is underpaid and needs your charity. And they're not. They're very well paid. Service workers in Japan actually earn a living wage. So the idea of them needing tips would be an insult. In Australia,
I mean, we do tip in France, for example, but it's like €2. It's called a pourboire, that means for drink. It's like you give €2 so the person can get a drink after the service. Basically, that's how it works. I mean, now for €2 you don't get a drink, but if you serve, like, for example, 3 tables, you get $6 and you can get like a drink after work hours. But yeah, it's not really tips. It's a for drink.
Minimum wage for hospitality workers is around $21 per hour. Tips do happen, but they're considered a bonus and they're not required for your survival. The difference between those countries and America isn't necessarily the culture. It's not that Americans are more generous and Japanese people are more proud. It's simply the labor laws. That's it. And since we're on the subject of labor law, let's talk about what happens when your boss decides they simply don't want you around anymore.
Yeah, because they don't really have law for employee, like to protect employees' rights in America. That's, oh my God.
In 49 of the 50 United States, your employer can fire you today, right now, while you're watching this video, for no reason at all, without notice, without severance, without even any explanation at all if they don't want to give you one. The only legal requirement is that the reason, if there is one, can't be explicitly illegal. So technically they can't fire you for your race or your religion, but we just don't need you anymore is a totally valid reason. Or we're going in a different direction. Totally fine. Or even, no reason, here's your last paycheck, your desk has been cleared. Completely, entirely, 100% legal. This is called at-will employment, and it's the default in every US state except Montana. Most Americans have just gotten to the point where we accept this as how employment works. It's just the deal. You work, they pay you, and either of you can walk away at any time. But that's not how employment works in most of the world. In Germany, if a company wants to let someone go, they have to provide social justification. They have to demonstrate.
Yeah, it's the same in France. You have to justify why you want to fire the person, and you have to have a good justification. Like, if it's just, yeah, we don't want them anymore, it doesn't work.
A legitimate reason for firing you. They have to follow a process, and termination without cause is not justified. In France, it's a very similar process, and workers can take unfair dismissal to labor court. Reinstatement is common, which means you often end up getting your job back. In the UK, employees with more than 2 years of service have full unfair dismissal protection. So you can't just get rid of them when you want to. You have to follow an entire process, and you have to document causes, there are hearings, etc. And in Japan, terminating an employee without significant justification is so legally difficult and culturally unusual that lifetime employment at a single company was until...
I mean, yes, but Japan is not an example for employment either, because people do crazy hours, right? It's not perfect. It's not a perfect system.
Recently, basically the norm. Now, the standard American defense of at-will employment that I know some of you are going to say is, yeah, okay, but workers can quit at any time too. It goes both ways. And yeah, that's true. You can quit a job without any notice, which is a real freedom, if you want to call it that. But here's the thing about it goes both ways. Your employer has lawyers. Your employer has an HR department. Your employer has 6 months of operating reserves, institutional knowledge, and 20 other people who can absorb your work while they recruit your replacement. And you have rent due on the first. So the freedom, yes, is technically symmetrical, but the power is not. So in an argument between a corporation and an individual with a mortgage and 2 kids, mutual does not mean equal. So we have medical bankruptcy, children being shamed for lunch debt, workers depending on tips to survive, and jobs that can vanish without warning. And now we can get to the final piece, the one that might...
It's beautiful. In America, you can be not paid by your boss. You rely on client tips, and you can be fired on the spot. That's absolutely amazing. I love America. W. El America.
Be the most personally painful for a lot of people watching this.
I'm gonna talk about what I was saying earlier, but students and youth in general is the future of a country. So it's crazy to me that education is not free in America. I mean, I was in a private school, so my parents paid for my education, but it was nowhere close to what you pay in America. They were paying 10K a year, and that's like extremely expensive education in France. So I let you imagine how I'm going to be shocked when they're gonna say how much 1 year studies in America is.
A job that you just lost? Well, you needed a degree to get that job. And that degree cost you $50,000. And you're going to be paying it off for the next 20 years. Americans currently hold $1.77 trillion in student loan debt. Trillion, with a T. The average person who took out loans to get a bachelor's degree owes around $37,000 when they graduate. And the average monthly payment for that is around $500 for somewhere between the next 10 and 20 years. So that's a debt incurred at age 18, before you're legally even allowed to have an alcoholic drink with your friends, that's going to follow you now well into your 30s and 40s. And here's the part that makes me so mad and honestly doesn't get talked about enough. This wasn't always how it worked. After World War II, the GI Bill made college essentially free for returning veterans. And it worked. It did what it was intended to do. The American middle class exploded. College became the path, not a luxury or an elite privilege, but a legitimate, reasonable expectation for ordinary people. Throughout the 1960s and 70s, state governments heavily subsidized public universities. Tuition at a state school was minimal.
I mean, the problem with American system is that rich stay very, very rich and snowballs, and poor snowball down, if I can say like this. Like, if you're poor in America, you will forever be poor because there is no way of escaping it, because if you want education, you're gonna have to pay a loan. If you want healthcare, you're gonna have to pay. Like, it's not sustainable. Like, you cannot get out of it.
Adjusted for inflation, it was a fraction of what it is today. Then, starting in the 80s, state funding for higher education began to be cut. Universities had to find the money elsewhere because it was no longer coming from the government. So, tuition prices went up, and to help the students afford it, the federal government expanded student loan programs. Private lenders even got involved and offered the same. A whole industry grew up around the idea of lending money to 18.
It's crazy how it's all about making more money. It's all about making money, and never about the people.
Year-olds for their college degrees. And here's the perverse outcome of that. Once these loans were readily available, universities lost the pressure to keep costs down. They could raise tuition because they knew their students could just borrow more. So that's exactly what they did. Administration bloated, facilities expanded, amenities multiplied, and the tuition kept climbing and climbing. Between 1980 and today, the cost of college in America has increased by over 1,000%. And the cost of everything else has increased only by about 236%. And here's the part that ties directly back to where we started. Remember the man who filed for bankruptcy after his hospital bill? Well, fun fact, student loans cannot be discharged in bankruptcy. Almost every other type of debt can be. Credit card debt, medical debt, business loans, you name it. You can declare bankruptcy and get a free start, but student loans will follow you. They can garnish your wages, they can take your tax refund, they can follow you until you die. The debt that you took on at age 18 for a
I guess if you die, it goes to your kids, right?
degree that you needed to participate into the economy is legally treated as more binding than almost any other financial obligation you'll ever have. Germany abolished tuition fees at public universities in 2014, and not just for Germans.
I think a year when I was in university, so it's free in France. It costs $200. It's just like the fees to get in, $200. And you have the lunch. So it's like you have breakfast, lunch, and dinner at the university, and each lunch is $1. That was good old time. I don't know if it's still like this.
But for international students too, because their thinking was educated people benefit society, so society should pay for education. In Norway, education is free. In France, students can expect to pay roughly $900 to $1,000 per year.
It's less than this.
For a public university. Even the UK, which has tuition relatively high by European standards, has an income contingent repayment system where you only pay when you earn above a certain threshold, and the debt is forgiven after 30 years no matter what. The United States is one of the wealthiest countries in the world in the history of human civilization. So this is not a question of whether America can afford to do things differently.
I mean, I think America appears wealthy because there is extremely rich people, but in reality, there is a lot of poverty, right?
It's a question of whether it has chosen to. And up to today, the answer is no. We have a country where you can go bankrupt for getting sick, where children accrue debt for food, where workers legally cannot survive on their wage without the generosity of strangers, where your job can evaporate without warning, where the cost of the education you need to get that job will follow you for decades. These are not 5 separate problems. They are one problem, wearing 5 different masks. Let's look at them again. When you get sick in America, the cost is yours, not the government's, not your community's, fully 100% yours. When a child can't afford lunch, the cost falls on their family, not the school or the state. When a restaurant can't pay its workers a living wage, the cost then gets transferred onto the customer. And when the economy turns and a company needs to cut costs, that cost is borne by the worker who loses his job. And when a young person needs an education to compete in the modern society, the cost is a personal debt that follows them around for 20 years or more. Every single one of these things exists because of the same underlying choice. At some point, whether through policy or ideology, through decades of political decisions, America has decided that the cost of being human is an individual problem. Getting sick is your problem. Being hungry is your problem. Having a job is your problem. Getting an education is your problem. Every other wealthy country made a different calculation. They said some costs are too fundamental, too universal, too human to be left to the individual to decide. So we will share that burden. That's what a society is for. America looked at that calculation.
That's what I said!
And said, no. We believe in the individual. We believe in self-reliance.
I think that's it with America. It's like an individual country where everyone is looking at themselves, and so they probably don't feel bad having people being in debt and stuff, because it's not of their problem. When in Europe, I would say country is more about like a society. So it's everyone together, everyone pay tax for everyone, and for everyone to have access to the bare minimum.
We believe that if you work hard, you'll be fine. And if you're not fine, maybe you didn't work hard enough. The things that we talked about today are not a secret, and they're not really even hidden. If you're American or you know any Americans, we all know about medical bankruptcies. We know that they exist. We've lived through the lunch debt. We've experienced the tip guilt, the sudden firing, and the burden of having a student loan payment for years and years. What's interesting is not that these things exist, but it's that they've been normalized. They've been accepted for so long and built into the furniture of daily life so thoroughly that it takes completely stepping outside or having someone from the outside point it out to actually see how strange it is. And surprisingly, or maybe not surprisingly, this list is nowhere.
It's not just strange, like it's something that we can't even imagine, because we have never witnessed that in my country. I have never witnessed that. So obviously it's unbelievable to imagine how you can go through this.
Near finished. Not even close. We haven't talked about paid family leave, or the lack thereof, mandatory vacation days, the price of insulin, prison labor, the fact that the US is one of 3 countries on Earth without federally mandated maternity leave. So if you want a part 2, let me know in the comments which one you want to hear about first, because apparently we could be here for a while. There's a very specific...
Okay. This is insane though. I mean, nowadays everyone knows about that, but hearing it and having example and like putting yourself in this position where when you have an example, you can imagine what if it happened to me. I'm just so shocked, guys. I'm gonna be honest, I'm just so shocked. But yeah, that was a good video to watch. Honestly, it's good to educate yourself about other culture and how it works in other countries. Oh, I'm leaving a like on the video. Guys, thank you for watching this video. Actually, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I hope I see you tomorrow again. And until tomorrow, stay safe and take care of yourself. Bye bye.